Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with part 2 of what promises to be an endless series of music chats on Demented Bach Transcriptions. Well, maybe not all of them in this case are going to be demented, but some of them will be. You can be sure of it. In fact, what we have now is this, a 20 CD set of Bach transcriptions on Brilliant Classics. And you can be sure that with 20 CDs to work with, some of these things are going to be whoppers. And as I think I mentioned in my last chat about Demented Bach transcriptions, it was a peculiarity of Bach's music that it seems to exist independently of the medium for which it was originally intended. Bach was not a colorist, and he famously wrote for everything the same way. Voices, instruments, it didn't matter. It was the same music, and he wrote for it the same way. In fact, you could argue that he probably didn't really know how to write for some instruments and didn't even care. I mean, it's really kind of fascinating. So that makes his music perfect for transcription. And of course, Bach transcribed his own stuff all the time, and everybody else did it all the time, and Baroque music tended to be transcribed. You know, I really think when you think about it, at least as far as ensemble music goes, particularly what we now call orchestral music, is that as long as you wrote music that was based on having a continuo part, a basso continuo, you really couldn't be that much of a colorist because the frame of the music was largely fixed. And a lot of what we consider orchestral color has to do with harmonic shading. But when you automatically throw all the harmony into the continuo with a keyboard and a couple strings on the bottom, and then you have a couple solo voices on top, and everything is sort of contrapuntally based, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunities to exploit instrumental color in the way that later composers were able to. Notwithstanding that, there were some Baroque composers who were really quite astounding in terms of their use of color. Telemann was a colorist. Handel was a colorist. Zelenka could have been a colorist. Bach, not so much. But anyway, we've got 20 discs of stuff to go through. So let's just do our usual. This is a surprise for me, as it will be for you, because I haven't looked at this yet. This just showed up, and I'm going to open it, and we're going to embark on a 20-disc voyage of discovery together. Are you ready? So here we go. Disc 1, and of course, this being a Brilliant Classics box, there's like no notes or anything. So we got to figure out, looking at one disc, oh, it does have a little bookie. Wait a minute, there's a cute little booklet about Bach transcriptions. So, first surprise, there it is. Isn't that lovely? But now it doesn't have track listings, of course. So we're going to look at this one disc at a time and see what we see. Disc number 1, the Goldberg Variations. Oh my God. And it's arranged for a recorder quintet. By Maria Martinez Ayerza. And the group is called Seldom Seen, S-E-N-E. I think the group of recorders doing the Goldberg Variations. Well, that's a punishment. Sight unheard. Remember, I haven't heard any of this stuff yet. I'm just telling you what it is. But that's my guess. I think it's probably a pretty safe guess, if you ask me. Although, if you have enough recorders with enough pitch ranges, who knows what you get. It's going to tootle along. Toot, 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 right? Next, let's see. Sonatas and partitas for solo violin, arranged for guitar. Okay, that's not a big deal. There are millions of guitar arrangements of everything that Bach wrote. And then we have, we get all of them. Okay, you get all 6 of them. The guitarist is Francesco, can I even see this? Tropini is what it looks like. Of course, the print is teeny, teeny, tiny and very hard to read. So I may not get some of these things. I should bring my magnifying glass. It's really terrible. We're already up to disc 4. Let's see. Oh, these are the sonatas for solo cello, arranged for baritone saxophone. Oh, there you go. There's something you want to spend your life listening to, isn't it? A baritone saxophone by Henk van Twilbert. Yes, Henk von Twilbert. Well, isn't Henk van Twilbert? Twillert, I'm sorry. Henk van Twillert, that's his name. The baritone saxophonist. He's a baritone saxophonist, and he has arranged the Bach cello suites for the baritone saxophone. Right? All of them? Oh, yeah. 2 discs worth. Can't have enough, can you? Now, what do we get? Oboe concertos. Okay, these are all reconstructions. And, as you know, because there are no existing Bach oboe concertos, but the keyboard concertos can be shown to have been written, at least in terms of their range, possibly for oboe or oboe d'amore. And here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 concerto reconstructions. And let's see. And some of them are taken from cantata movements. Oh, it's lots of transcriptions. It's very, very seriously transcribed. Disc 7, recorder concertos. Well, these are probably more or less the same as the oboe concertos, except you play them up an octave or something and you get recorder concertos. I mean, you can basically take any piece of Bach that's in 3 movements and turn it into a concerto for something. All that has to happen is that these solo lines have to fall within the range of your instruments. And if they don't, well, you just change them. What difference does it make? It's all Bach, right? I remember once, I have to tell you, this was just a little story from my peregrinations through the demented world of classical music. I once got a disc of Bach's 7 solo cello suites. Now, as you may know, Bach only wrote 6 solo cello suites, but as the notes pointed out, they said, well, yes, it's true, Bach only wrote 6 solo cello suites. One was his lute suite, but played by the cello, but they said he could have written it for cello if he wanted to. Well, yes, and the fact that he didn't is sort of irrelevant, and that, of course, brought on a wonderful discussion with my dear friend in Germany, Dr. Sören Meyer-Eller, about all of the possibilities that Bach could have done if he had wanted to. Things like Schoenberg's Gurlieder. He could have written it if he wanted to, right? Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. Bach could have written it if he wanted to. It's just by Bach. And one of the actual notes we also found from that, program note things that sort of got me in acquiring what passes for my knowledge of Bach was in discussing the organ music. And, when Peter Herfer did that big series on London, and he was questioning, a lot of the Bach organ works, some of the most famous ones like the Toccata and Fugue in D minor, we don't have manuscripts for any of this stuff. We're assuming it's by Bach. And so what happens is that anything that sounds vaguely fugal and we don't know who wrote it and who's associated possibly with one of Bach's students like Altnickel or Forkel or one of those guys, you just say, well, must have been by Bach, And it's actually a very convenient way to gather up all of the miscellaneous Baroque organ music that's any good and make sure it gets played because you attribute it to someone who's famous and people will perform it. If you say it was by, Hans Hubert Schmeckendriller, no one is going to ever want to play it because no one cares about Hans Hubert Schmeckendriller. So you might as well say that Bach wrote it. So between the 7 cello suites and every piece of organ music in the Baroque period, we can safely say that it's all by Bach. Let's just give him credit for all of it and move on, right? So meanwhile, CD number 8. Violin concertos transcribed for the organ. I mean, why not? Because after all, Bach we only have 3 surviving violin concertos, the double violin concerto and the other 2 for solo violin. And as we know, most of these violin concertos became keyboard concertos, but you don't have the originals anymore. So why leave them for the violin? Play them on the organ. I mean, what the hell? Who cares? Who's the organist here? It's Danielle, something that I can't see. So that's who it's going to be. Danielle, something that we can't see. And I couldn't pronounce it if I could see it, so it doesn't make any difference. Let's see, what do we have here? Trio sonatas. Okay, well, the trio sonatas are oh dear. Okay. trio sonatas transcribed for a huge pile of Baroque flutes. These are the 6 trio sonatas, the organ trios, which I happen to think are some of the greatest music Bach ever wrote. If you want to hear unbelievably pure, fabulous polyphony in its best form, listen to Bach's organ trios. They are special, wonderfully special. In fact, we're going to do a talk on the organ trios someday. The only problem is I have to find my 65 recordings of the Bach organ trios in order to do it, and they all sound more or less the same, so it's sort of a hard talk. But yes, the Bach organ trios are wonderful, and here you have them played not on the organ, on lots and lots of Baroque flutes, which is kind of annoying. Actually, oh look, and here's the Goldberg variations again. We're already on disc 10, transcribed for string trio. This is Dmitri Stakovsky's transcription, and it's a good one. It's quite effective. He recorded it with his own trio, the trio Stakovsky, if I recall correctly. And then, of course, there's the string orchestra version. The Goldberg variations appear all over the place. You know, there's the version for 6 aquariums, you know, with the bubbles floating up. It's just delightful. This is the Amati string trio with, you know, the Amati people, and it's quite lovely. I know this performance. It's licensed from somewhere or other. Oh, more concerto reconstructions. Okay. I mean, these are all taking things like the harpsichord concertos and doing other things. Now we have a concerto in D minor. That's usually, let's see, what it comes from. It's 1052, right? Sure, the famous one. You know that one. The real famous one. This is for organ, oboes, and strings. Then we get a different one for harpsichord, oboe, and strings. And then there's one for viola da braccia and strings. A viola da braccia is an arm viola, as opposed to the viola da gamba, which is the leg viola. I mean, viol, not viola, viol, the viol. You know, the dying cow thing, the thing that sounds like a cow in distress. That's a viol, and most of them are viola da gamba, because you play it like a cello in front with your leg or squished between your legs. But the viola da braccia, you play like a violin on your arm, like this, right? So that's that thing. And then there's the concerto in D for 3 violins, 2 oboes, bassoon, strings, and it's based on 1064, which is one of the multiple harpsichord concertos, I guess. You guys probably know your BWV numbers better than I do. I never paid much attention to them. Let's see. Oh, suites for guitar. Well, apparently there are 3 of them. Like this is lute music or cello music, or, you know, all of those solo instrument things are all transcribed from other things anyway. So you get 3 suites for guitar. This is CD 12. More suites for guitar, and let's see. This is with Luigi Attademo guitar, and there are a bunch of them, 6 of them. I really never listened to Bach on guitar. I don't know about you, and I'm not listening to that. Okay, now we get, oh, here we go. The complete sonatas and partitas for solo violin and the suites for solo cello, all transcribed for harpsichord by Gustav Leonhardt. Now, Gustav Leonhardt is not performing them. They are being played by Roberto Loregiano, or Loregian. Yeah, just plain Loregian. And you know, Leonhardt was a great musician, a great Bach guy, a serious guy. His harpsichord transcriptions are interesting because they're by Leonhardt, and of course, and there are 3 discs of them. This is a lot of stuff. Yeah, based on the solo cello stuff. And then there's a bit of the solo flute thing and a bit of the lute thing. And they're all played now on a harpsichord, which means you have to find something for your left hand to do because the tune will be in the right hand. And he's filling in the harmonies which were otherwise just implied by the solo string lines that he is basically working from. Then we get, transcriptions by Busoni. And these are performed by Sandro Ivo Bartoli on the piano. And, you know, Busoni's Bach transcriptions are very, very well known and very famous and very, very well made. And they include, you know, juicy things like, you know, the chaconne from the violin partita and 10 chorale preludes and lots of preludes and fugues and the toccata adagio and fugue in C major. Oh, just huge amounts of fun stuff like that. And then we have, oh, this is nice. This is actually rather nice. This is kind of charming. Wait a minute, my box is falling apart here. Okay, piano transcriptions by Eugène d'Albert, which is really kind of nice to have. In addition to Busoni, you've got the Dorian toccata and fugue in D minor. You've got the Passacaglia in C minor, and a bunch of other toccata and fugues, which, you know, that's kind of nice to have. It's all organ music transcribed for the piano. And that's nice because usually we get Busoni Bach transcriptions and occasionally a few other people too. And finally, last but not least, Stakovsky Bach transcriptions. The Cerebrier's recording. This is licensed from Naxos. And they're lovely. It's with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. Cerebrier does a wonderful job. He was a disciple of Stakovsky. He knows his Stakovsky. He knows how to make that completely rich, juicy, vibrato-laden, totally unidiomatic Baroque string sound. Well, I don't think it's unidiomatic at all, actually, but it wasn't the way Stakovsky did it. And so you get that Naxos disc of Stakovsky Bach transcriptions by Cerebrier, which is wonderful. So that's it. 20 discs of Bach transcriptions, and only a couple of them, but basically, you know, the Goldberg variations for recorder ensemble and the cello suites for baffitone saxotone or whatever it's called. Those are the ones that are falling into the demented category. But otherwise, I mean, you know, if you're a Bach guy, which I happen really not to be, but if you're a Bach guy, you're going to want this because 20 discs of Bach transcriptions is just an irresistible acquisition for a rainy day, I would say. And, you know, even if you're not a Bach guy, you may find that some of this, you know, floats your boat, sounds intriguing. One way or another, it will give us an excuse to keep on listening. And I'm actually going to play this. I'm going to sit down with it and dip into it and play around and see what it sounds like just for the fun of it. I mean, some of these performances I already know, but, you know, I mean, the Goldberg variations on recorder quintet, I mean, who could resist that? I'll be able to tell you very shortly, that's for sure. Anyway, take care, friends. Thank you. All the best.